Chapter 1. His eyes snapped open. He tried to figure out if this was real or yet another dream. He looked over at the bright green numbers on his clock. It read 05:59. As he stood up and his feet landed on the cold cement floor, he decided that this was, in fact, real. Memories of the dream quickly faded as he walked to the bathroom to take a shower. Just another day in the life of John Williams, he mused aloud as he looked into the mirror at his pale face. His short-cut, dark brown hair was a mess from tossing and turning throughout the night. He turned on the shower and let the warm water steam up the room as he lathered his face. Stepping into the shower, John began to shave off the stubble that dotted his rounded jawline. When he had finished shaving, he stood there for a moment, letting the water wash over him as he tried to remember the dream that had shaken him. After a few moments of pondering, he turned off the shower, put on his gold and blue work uniform, and went over to the window. He looked out at New Haven, the underground city that he called home. The artificial sun globe hanging at the peak of the 20-mile-wide domed cavern was just beginning to glow brighter. The shine reflected off the many towers of the upper housing zone of the city, which lay nearly halfway between the southeastern wall of the dome and the center beneath the sun globe. Each building under the dome was over 100 stories high. Several Airbuses could be seen weaving in and out of the buildings. John walked over to his dinner table and poured himself a bowl of cereal. Looking over at the calendar on the wall, he noted the red circle around today's date, April 29th, 2212. He turned on the telescreen mounted on the wall. The female news reporter's voice was soft and calm. Today marks not only the memorial of one of the worst times in human history, but a landmark in that history. Only our oldest residents remember the dreadful events which made the surface of the earth uninhabitable 100 years ago today. In just over an hour, the New Haven Defense Operations will send a team of explorers to the surface to ascertain whether it is safe to once again live there. The team will be led by Lieutenant John Williams, who has been preparing for this mission for the last year. John's eyes gleamed with a mix of excitement and fear. Yep, just another day in the life of me, he spoke to himself. The wail of the siren pierced Ensign Gary Durham's mind as he hurried down the corridor. It had been 2 minutes since the red alert sounded. A lot can happen in 2 minutes. He reached the command center, nearly running headlong into the doors as they hissed open. The view screen at the front of the command center showed a vast starfield and the horizon of the red planet below. On the surface of the planet, the domes of the 4 Martian colonies were visible. It had been around 52 Martian years since the station had lost contact with Earth, just after the establishment of the 4 colonies that had now become thriving cities. Gary had grown up in New Seattle, one of the 2 American settlements on Mars. He was rather average in appearance, being 6 feet tall and just over 200 pounds, with dirty blonde hair and a slight build. What made him stand out was his knack for creative thinking. He had always been good at developing solutions for almost any problem. He had been admitted to the Academy of Colonial Defense at an early age, when he was only 8 Martian years, roughly 16 Earth years old. After spending 2 years in the Academy, Gary graduated in the top 1% of his class with a specialty in mechanical and electrical science, as well as advanced computer operations, including computer-based weapon systems. As Gary entered the command center, the first thing his eyes were drawn to was the woman seated at the communications station. She had long brown hair pulled into a tight ponytail to match regulation dress code. Her flawless, light brown skin seemed to glow, causing her dark brown eyes to sparkle. She wore the standard dark red uniform of a sub-lieutenant that hugged all the right curves in all the right places. The uniform had a black band running from the left shoulder to the right hip. On this band, 2 white dots appeared near the shoulder, with an upside-down V shape right below them. "Good morning, Amanda," he said as he passed her to reach the weapons station where he was assigned. "Morning, Gary." she replied in a cool but serious voice. Gary was the tactical officer of the planetary defense station Cerberus. After the Martian colonies had lost contact with Earth, the British-American Colonial Defense Force had repurposed the orbiting space station from science and data gathering to planetary defense. It was renamed the Cerberus after the three-headed dog that protects Hades in Greek myth. After graduating from the academy, Gary had been assigned to the Cerberus for nearly a year now, and in addition to his command center duties, he had also been placed in charge of the station's Tactical Research Division. The Research Division was responsible for developing ways to use the latest technology to help defend the planet from possible threats. However, right now, most of his team was on leave. Gary's own uniform was similar to Amanda's, except it was gold with only 2 dots on the black bar, and not the upside-down V-shape. It was 06:05 station time. Usually, Gary would have had another 25 minutes to get to his post, but when the red alert sounded, he was forced to go on duty early. In the middle of the command center was a rotating seat where the commander of the station, George Skimore, was sitting. He was a tall, semi-stocky man with short, black hair and dark brown skin. He was dressed in a gold uniform similar to Gary's, but with 3 dots and 2 upside-down V-shapes on the black bar. The commander turned towards Gary. "Ensign Durham, you're finally here." His voice was stern and commanding, but not harsh. "A few minutes ago, we received a signal on the long-range sensors. It was there for less than a minute before it disappeared. From what little information we got from it before it left sensor range, it was a metallic object about the size of a civilian shuttle. Our analysis shows the metal and circuitry to be of the same composition as the Galleon." The Galleon was the nickname given to the starship which had brought the first settlers to Mars. At the time, most people thought it was just the latest in rocket technology, but now everybody knows the truth. The ship was actually an alien ship that crashed on Earth in the early 2050s. The governments of the United States of America and Great Britain had worked together to turn it into a colony ship which could colonize Mars when the need arose. Commander Skimore continued, "We believe that the ship we detected is from the same species of alien which created the technology that brought us here. We don't know what their intentions are, but we hope we can create peaceful contact." Ensign Durham looked at the console in front of him. On it were several indicators, indicating weapon status, as well as several controls for relaying target coordinates and tactical information to the gun turrets. Today promises to be a long day, thought Gary. I had better be at my best, or we could be in big trouble. As he left his room and locked it, Lieutenant Williams started thinking about the coming mission. He was to lead the team which would survey the atmosphere and radiation levels of the Earth's surface. He had been preparing for this day for the past year, so why was he so nervous? Maybe it was the dreams. They were getting worse. His doctor said they were due to stress and his anxiety of the upcoming mission, but they seemed so real. In any case, he had to focus on the mission. As he entered the elevator, a mechanized voice requested,
"Please state your destination level."
"Ground floor, please," John stated to the walls. The lift began to move down, slowly at first, but then, as it picked up speed, he felt as if he were getting lighter. After descending over 200 floors in just under a minute, the lift slowed to a halt at the bottom floor, and John's weight normalized.
"Have a nice day,"
said the mechanical voice. Stepping out of the lift, John was approached by a light-haired man. His skin wasn't quite as pale as John's, and he was a few inches shorter. "Good morning, John," greeted the man. "Oh, hi, Matt," John replied in a slightly agitated voice. They walked down the hallway toward the exit of the building. "You look a bit nervous today, John. Are you worried about the mission?" "Not so much worried as concerned. It's nothing really, just a dream I had." "Well, as long as it doesn't hinder the mission," Matt said. "Commander Anson has put a lot of faith in you." "I know that," John replied softly. "I said it was nothing. In any case, I've been preparing for this mission for the past year, and I'm not going to blow it because of bad dreams." They reached the doorway to the exit. "Yeah, okay," Matt conceded. "Anyway, I better get to the office. Just wanted to say good luck before your mission." Thanks, little bro. I'll see you when I get back. Right. As they went their separate way and John got onto the bus to the NHDO office, he couldn't shake the feeling that something horrible was going to happen today. He hoped he was wrong. As the consoles beeped, Gary was beginning to get bored. It had been an hour since the alien ship had been detected on sensors. Since then, it had been quiet. Very quiet. Maybe they're not coming, Gary murmured to no one in particular. That would be nice. The voice was that of Communications Officer Amanda Jarvis. Then we could all relax. Maybe we could get a coffee together, Gary suggested, being bolder than usual. Amanda looked a bit taken off guard. You mean you and me? She asked. Yeah, Gary began. I was thinking maybe we could... His words got cut short by the sound of his console beeping. First once, then again and again, as his targeting screen began filling with tiny red dots. Commander, I've got multiple targets incoming. How many? Commander Skimore's voice was tense with anticipation and just a hint of fear. I'm not sure, sir, Ensign Duran reported. 30 or more, they just keep coming. All hands, this is Commander Skimore. Skimore's voice rang out over the comm systems. Report to battle stations. Repeat, all hands to battle stations. The station buzzed with activity as crew members hurried to their stations. Pilots reported to the hangar bay where 50 one-man fighters, built using a combination of human and alien technology, were docked. Back in the command center, Ensign Durham was watching the console. Suddenly, the blip signifying enemy ships slowed to a halt. Sir, he reported, they seem to be coming to a stop. What should we do? Lieutenant Jarvis, send out a standard greeting to the lead ship. Commander Skimore had a concerned look on his face. As they waited for the hail to go through, the entire command center was whispering to each other, all except for the comm and weapon stations, which sat alert for any type of response. Suddenly, a console beeped. Sir, the lead ship is hailing us, Sub-Lieutenant Jarvis reported. Put it on screen, the commander ordered. The view screen flickered from the starfield to the face of an alien creature. All that could be seen was the head, which appeared sort of human, except that it had no nose and no ears. Instead, it had two large antennae on top of its head. Two ant-like mandibles extruded from the sides of its mouth. Its skin had a rough, semi-chitinous look to it, and a brownish complexion with patches of yellow. Its eyes were a yellow-green color with compound retinas. The alien spoke in a raspy, insect-like voice. Its words were long, drawn-out, and complicated. As it spoke, the words seemed to reverberate off the walls. When it was done speaking, Commander Skimore turned to face the comm station. Miss Jarvis, are you able to translate their language? Not yet, Amanda reported. The computer is having a bit of trouble. It needs more words to form a baseline. Gary looked over to her and suggested, why don't you try to incorporate the recordings that were found on the galleon back on Earth? That just might do the trick, she responded. Doing it now. As the computer beeped, words began to form on the screen. They read,
Creatures of the human race, you have attacked our vessel, and stolen our technology. For this, you will pay. We are the Skrikashik. Surrender your station, which was built with our technology. Your race will adapt to serve us. Skrikashik forever alive.
Amanda read the words as they appeared on the screen. Commander Skimore turned to the view screen. Skrikashik, this is Commander Skimore in command of the Planetary Defense Station Cerberus. We apologize for our ancestors' action. Maybe it was wrong of them to use your technology without asking, but it saved our race from extinction. We would not have been able to survive the nuclear devastation were it not for the ship built out of your vessel. I hope we can reach an agreement that will benefit both of our races. As the commander of this station, I invite you on board to discuss further. What do you say? John Williams stepped into the large concrete building. The sounds of people talking and computers beeping could be heard throughout the hall. It was far busier than usual, but there was nothing usual about this day. As they went about their various tasks, there was a slight tension in the air that could be felt by everyone. John walked toward the elevator, which would take him to the briefing room. As he approached the lift, he saw two familiar faces, A man and a woman, each dressed in a similar uniform as John. The woman wore a blue shirt with gold trim and black pants. The sleeves of the shirt were wrist length and were black. The shoulders of the shirt were light gold with a single black stripe from front to back. John's shirt was different only in that it had 2 stripes on the shoulders instead of 1. The man's shirt was almost identical, only it was dark red instead of blue. "Good morning, John," the woman greeted. "It's good to see you here. You're not nervous about the mission, are you?" Tiffany Jones was average height for a woman, around 5 foot 9 inches tall, and about 130 pounds. She had sparkling green eyes with golden hair pulled into a tight ponytail. The man spoke before John could answer. "Leave him alone, Tiff. I'm sure he's got enough on his mind without you pestering him." Samuel Dawkins was shorter than Tiffany, around 5 foot 6, and had dark brown hair and a trim mustache. He was rather thin and not very muscular, a fact he made up for by training himself in ranged combat. He looked over at John and noted, "You do seem a bit on edge. Something the matter?" "Oh, now you're pestering him. Sam, you need to be less hypocritical," Tiff teased as the elevator door opened and they got on. "I'm fine," John said. "Just a little anxious about the mission, that's all." John pressed 2 buttons on the wall, the ones labeled A and 7. The lift began to quickly rise. "I'm sure you are," replied Sam. "After all, it's the first time you've been put in charge of a mission." "It's the first real mission we've had," John spoke with a bit of a crack in his voice. "It's okay," said Tiff. "It's the first real mission the NHDO has ever had. It was only formed 10 years ago after the rebellion problems." "I know that," retorted John. "I'm just worried that something will go wrong. Maybe it's nothing, but over the past few weeks I've been having strange dreams." "What kind of dreams?" asked Sam. The lift slowed, then began to move horizontally along a track to the far end of the building. "It's hard to say." John closed his eyes and tried to think. "I can't remember much when I wake up, but from what I can remember, most of them take place on the surface. There are creatures. I can't remember what they look like, but for some reason they're chasing me." John opened his eyes again. "It's just a dream," Tiff said as the lift stopped and the doors opened. "Nothing could live in that radiation. That's why we're forced underground." "Yeah," Sam repeated. "Nothing could survive it. Anyway, we'd better hurry or Commander Ansem will have our heads." The briefing room was dark and empty as Sergeant Walker entered. He was the first of the team to arrive, as usual. He liked to arrive a few minutes early so that he could gather his thoughts before the briefing. He had been selected for this mission as a security guard in the event of hostile life forms being present on the surface. His mastery of saber-style fencing, as well as his superior hand-to-hand combat training, was rare among New Havians. He had learned it from his father, who had been a peacekeeper during the Despair riots of the late 2170s. Because of his focus on finesse, his arms were, while rather strong, not as well defined as some of the other men on the team. Lucas was dressed in a dark red uniform of the same design as Sergeant Dawkins. As he entered, the lights automatically illuminated the theater-style room. He took his seat in the back and began to review their last training mission in his mind. The training missions had all been the same. The team suited up in radiation-resistant rubber suits. They ascended up a long corridor to simulate the evacuation tunnel they would be using for their actual missions. Only this one was barely 100 feet long, instead of several miles. Upon emerging in a room that was about the size of an old Earth American football field, they had begun to look for a good spot to set up their equipment. "Good morning, Lucas." Sergeant Walker snapped out of his memory as he heard his given name. He looked over to the door just in time to see an older man enter the room. "Good morning, Dr. Matfield," Walker responded politely. Dr. Matfield was the chief radiologist of the New Haven Research Institute, and the first person in New Haven to attain a doctorate in the field since the evacuation. He had been assigned as the technician of the team. His job on the mission would be to operate the radiation detector that they had developed and determine the viability of return to the surface. Dr. Matfield was nearly 60 years old with gray, balding hair. He was about 5 foot 9 inches tall and was slightly overweight. He was dressed in a green uniform, similar to the one worn by the rest of the team, but instead of gold trim, it had black, and the shoulders were white with no stripes on them. Matfield had grown up in hard times. His parents were just children when the evacuation of the surface had taken place, and he had heard stories of life on the surface from his grandparents. Ever since then, he had dreamed of visiting the surface, and soon his dreams would be realized. Soon after Matfield entered, John, Tiffany, and Sam entered the room. They all sat down in their seats. Just as they did, a tall, bald man entered the room from another entrance near the front of the room. He appeared older than he actually was, with semi-wrinkled skin. His skin was dark tan with just a hint of red. He wore a blue uniform in the standard design. His shoulders were dark gold with a sparkling gold trim, however, and they sported 2 black stripes and 3 gold stripes. Commander Ansem looked at the team and spoke in a deep, semi-raspy voice. Sergeant Tiffany Jones, Sergeant Samuel Dawkins, Sergeant Lucas Walker, Sergeant Michael Harper. Has anybody seen Sergeant Harper? Just at that time, a guitar sounded in the hallway. First quietly, then it grew louder. A younger man stepped into the room. He was in his mid-20s, stood nearly 6 feet tall, and had a shaved head. His uniform was dark red with black trim and a single stripe on his shoulder. His uniform was sloppy and his sleeves were pulled up to his elbow. A single tattoo of an exploding skull was barely visible on the back of his neck. His left forearm was covered in a long red dragon tattoo. In each ear, he wore a single white earbud with a cord leading to a small white box at his waist. The sound of the guitar flowed from the earbuds into the room. He's late, stated Sam. Tiffany finished his sentence. As always. Commander Ansem cleared his throat loudly as Michael Harper removed the earbuds from his ears. Late again, Sergeant Harper, Ansem said sternly. Harper simply shrugged, apathetic to Ansem's glare, and sat in his seat. As I was saying, Commander Ansem continued, the 4 of you, along with Dr. James Matfield and Lieutenant John Williams, have all been preparing for this mission for over a year. In that time, you have done remarkably well. All the details of the missions have been gone over time and time again, so you all know what this mission entails. But for the sake of procedure, Lieutenant John Williams, will you please go over the mission in detail? As Commander Ansem gestured, John stood up and went to a podium that had been prepared for the briefing. In an effort to analyze the surface radiation levels, we will be traveling to the surface via the evacuation tunnel. Once there, Dr. Matfield will use his equipment to survey the atmosphere and calculate the radiation levels. After that, we will search the surrounding area for any signs of life regrowing, plants, fungus, anything. The third part of the mission is the most dangerous. If life is found, we are to catalog it. If no life is found, we are to report that as well. In either case, we are to spend 2 nights on the surface in a radiation shelter if needed. The point of this is to record the daily cycle of the surface of the planet. After the second day, we will proceed to the evacuation tunnel and return to the NHDO office. We will go through radiation therapy while being debriefed. Thank you, Lieutenant, Commander Ansem said once John had finished speaking. You may be seated. John returned to his seat. All right, everyone, Ansem continued. The mission is set to begin at 0800. Until then, report to the medical office for final checkup. Dismissed. As they all got up and walked out the door, John hustled to walk beside Sergeant Harper and motioned for him to stop walking. What's up, Lieutenant? Harper said, almost disrespectfully. What's up? John repeated the question. You're late for the most important briefing in human history. You tell me what's up. It's not like they're gonna fire me. Apparently you need a demolitions expert, and I'm all you've got. I don't need you, John replied. You need us. Check your attitude, Sergeant, or you might find yourself back in the hole you were when we found you. Remember what you have to lose if I throw you off the team. We all know that if you had the power to do that, you'd have already done it. But the higher-ups want me here, so you don't have the authority to fire me. Before John could reply, Ansem's voice came from behind him. In this case, he does. Harper nearly pissed himself as he turned around. Ansem elaborated. If Lieutenant Williams deems you untrustworthy and a potential danger to the mission, I'll approve his request to remove you from the team. Understood? Understood, Harper replied. Good. Carry on. Ansem looked at John as Sergeant Harper walked away a little more quickly than before. I meant that too. I don't think we'll have any more trouble from him. Today, anyway. Good. Carry on, John. As Ansem turned and walked away, John looked at his watch. They had a little over half an hour before the mission began. He wondered if he could get a coffee before the checkup. He could use the caffeine, for today promised to be a very long day. There was a tension in the air as the command center of the Cerberus waited for the Skrikashik to respond to the request. It seemed like hours as they waited in silence as the alien on screen seemed to go into a trance. Sub-Lieutenant Jarvis speculated that it was some kind of telepathic communication with the other ships. Commander Skimore's thoughts turned to the various responses which could be given. In all of history, no one had ever come this close to an alien species. Even when the galleon crashed back on Earth, no one had actually gotten to speak to any of the aliens. In fact, according to the logs recovered from the ship, the crew all disintegrated themselves before the ship crashed. The data core had been wiped, except for a few final logs, so not much about their appearance or anything had been discovered. It wasn't enough to be translated, but now that a baseline for their language was established, maybe a true alliance could be formed. As the silence continued, Sub-Lieutenant Jarvis thought about what would happen if war broke out. Her family back in the New Seattle colony wouldn't be safe. No one would be safe. If war broke out, the only hope would be a miracle. As she looked over at Gary Durham, who had been her friend for a little over a year, and for whom she tried fiercely to hide her feelings, she said a quiet prayer for the safety of all her friends and family. Gary was busy analyzing the readouts from his instrument. The enemy ships were nearly the same size as their own fighters, but with a slightly larger payload. Their weapons were significantly more advanced. The enemy's shield systems, however, were surprisingly less developed than their own. It was also possible that they could be disrupted with the right frequency of energy pulse. Even though this could provide a tactical advantage, the implementation of this pulse would probably drain the station of all of its energy reserves, but it would be a good last resort plan. Even as he planned, he hoped they could come to a peaceful conclusion. The silence encompassed the room. Suddenly, the alien on screen began to speak in its strange, insect-like language. After a few seconds, the alien stopped speaking and the screen flashed back to the starfield. The translator screen showed only one word: attack. Thank you guys for listening to Chapter 1 of Invasion Orion. If you guys want to hear more, just hit that like button and let me know what you thought down in the comments below. I'm KnowItAllDM, and as always, y'all have a good day now.